Here we are in the latest episode of Semaphore Uncut. Today with us, we have Keren and Hadar. Guys, welcome.
Thank
Hi.
you.
Great. Maybe starting with Keren, you guys can introduce yourself and then we can dive in.
Great. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. Really happy to be here. My name is Keren Fanan. I'm based in Tel Aviv in Israel. The CEO and co-founder of Myop. My background is mostly in the product management and revenue generation. I spent 6 years at a company called Gett, which is a ride-hailing firm very similar to Uber. As the chief revenue officer, I managed all the marketing, sales, analytics department for a couple of years. And I spent a couple more years at a company called Moon Active, also an Israeli firm, gaming firm, as the VP of product monetization, where I also led the game economy and game operation, which was a hell of a ride. And now for the past year, we are working on Myop full time. So that's
Great. Thanks, Keren. Hadar, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Hadar. I'm CTO and co-founder here at Myop. And I'm coming from Wix, where at Wix I was a Fed Guild manager, managing the entire technical aspect of what front-end developer are doing at Wix, from the recruitment process to the onboarding to the technical stack and technical debt, leading and mentoring a lot of architects at Wix at the front-end guild. I did this role for the last 3 years. And before that, I was an architect myself at Wix, moved between different what called companies at Wix. Companies at Wix are product groups. So I had a chance to see a lot of angles of what's going on at the company, like Wix in terms of the front end. Before that, I worked at an American company called Jive Software for around 5 years. Did several roles there, started from a backend developer, then a mobile developer for almost 2 years, then front-end team lead, and managing the front end of the company. And before that, I'm coming for the more background of like the Army Intelligence Unit and Rafael, a weapon company in Israel, when I did there several development and managing positions. Yeah, this is about me.
Cool, thanks. So you guys are doing something innovative and different and introducing kind of some new patterns that are not so common. I would say so. Maybe you guys can give us on the high level what's the idea behind Myop and where you guys are.
sure. So Myop is a front-end development platform that basically lets you plug in external, completely independent components directly into your live production logic. At our core, we offer a meta framework that allows you to build a contract between your inner logic and new UI components. And we give you a full runtime control over these components. And by doing that, we actually open up a range of possibilities. One, we allow you to connect multiple components to one single logic. And by that, you can deliver different UI or UX experiences for different users. And we'll let you manage all of that remotely from our orchestration layer. So you don't have to manage it all in the code. Which means that you can make all of these changes without reopening your core code base or without waiting for repeated deploys. But you can also plug components built with any technology to a host application that's built in any technology. And so that basically means that you can have an app built with Angular, and you can connect new components that are built with React or Vue. We find that to be key for teams that are trying to deal with legacy code and want to kind of shift from legacy to new frameworks, or you manage multiple products and need to kind of help them connect to each other. But mostly, we believe that can be relevant more and more when it comes to AI, because what we do see is that most of the AI generated components default to React. So if you have your core app built with another framework, it's more difficult to actually connect that these new capabilities to your live production app, and we let it. But generally speaking, we actually think that a front end layer like Myop is the kind of right way to go. The more the front end evolve with the AI, disruption, I will call it, because you can now with us plug in AI components, but you can also plug them out. So you can test things, take them to production, but also roll back as easily if needed, without needing to embed this external code to your core code. And also we believe that AI is moving so fast, so why should you even lock yourself to a specific tool or technology, rather than try as many things as you want, test them, and then decide how to progress. So ultimately, our vision, I would say, is to make UI development a lot more flexible and robust, and built for a constant change, which we believe we are going to explore whether we want it or not.
Yeah, exactly. I have a little bit of a personal story to add to this. So at Semaphore, but it was like kind of many years ago, 5+ now. It was we made the switch from just some jQuery to do some things in the simplest way possible. Then we went it all in on Angular, only a couple of key pages for interaction. Then there were like some huge shifts in Angular that it was kind of almost easier to move to another framework than to upgrade to a new version of Angular.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a point in time where we had, I think, both React components, some old Angular code that we kind of wasn't really a need to bother, moving that. And it was there was a plan to, phase that out at some point. So, and from that point on, we try to make things stupid simple, as much as possible. So I guess it connects to some of the stories that you guys have also probably seen in the past. So yeah, maybe Hadar, you can give us kind of technical overview of the tech stack that you guys are providing, and then we can dive deeper.
Definitely. Just before that, I want really to connect to your story and say that from my angle, we hear it a lot. Like every front-end developer that is in the industry for more than, I don't know, 2-3 years, had this story when you had to shift something or mix and match technology or, I don't know, upgrade something. Most of the developers have this story. Really small amount of them really glad on the final solution that they end up with, right? Yeah, so just want to add to your story.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So regarding the map technology, so we actually took like a lot of our experiment. From my experiment at Wix and Jive, and also things that Keren saw in companies that she worked at, and our third co-founder, which is a CEO of another tech company, and we try to combine everything together. And when I got into Myop and thought about, all right, so now like we have one requirement to support, I don't know, iframes, for example. And I know this in this field that, all right, probably we will end up by supporting web components. And then AI is in the picture. And React keep moving, and Angular keep moving. So I look into the common aspects and common things that a component should contain. What is component should be structured of. And when we started Myop, we start, defining this. So we saw, of course, we explored like a lot of other frameworks before we started, and saw, every framework is doing it a little bit differently, but most of them are actually accepting props if you are sending them in or getting them out. Some of them allowing you to get refs, to get intermediate interactions with the DOM elements, like a loading phase, a disposing phase, like a tear down, and some kind of a state. So we created like the Myop component, as Keren presented it, as a contract with the OS capabilities built in. So for us, even before we start talking about the implementation, when we're talking about Myop component, is a component that knows how to be rendered into the DOM, to accept refs and allow access to inner elements inside it, getting props in and out, being loaded, managing a state, and then getting disposed and clean up after it. And when you put this into our system and put it in place, you can really easily write small, really small adapters to any framework which is reasonable nowadays. For example, our adapter for loading and hosting inside React application is something around 20, 30 lines of code, something like that. Our adapter for Angular, maybe 40 lines of code, something like that. Yep. So if we're taking it step up and talking about the entire architecture of Myop, it built up from few like big stones, and the stones are like our SDK, the core SDK that need to be inserted into each application that want to host Myop components. We call it the host SDK. You're an host application now, right? You want to host new components that will be loaded from remote. We have different SDKs from the different technologies, like an iframe SDK, Web Component SDK, we have the React SDK, Angular SDK, etc. And by the way, just like I mentioned, to create a new SDK, if, for example, some user want to integrate with Solid.js or Svelte or whatever, it can be like 20, 15 lines of code and is interacted with Myop. So the SDK is the part that you actually put inside your existing code. Pretty simple. Like it's not involving any build step. It's not involving any component rewriting or adaptation. It's really like, if in all the frameworks you are rendering to the DOM, so you get a component and a DOM element, for example, a Bootstrap application of Angular, or Bootstrap Vue application. So we just implemented our own exposure functions, which get a component and a name and exposing into the Myop runtime environment. So this is in terms of SDKs. Users that want to adopt the Myop way need to understand first that there is now two separate areas: the host application and the remote applications. Right? They are not sitting together inside the same repo anymore. They can sit together in the same monorepo. But all the idea here is to deploy them separately and manage them separately, even maybe test them separately. The other big stone.
May I jump in here just to clarify? So, if I have an existing web application, and there is a certain page where I would like to, start my journey with Myop. So essentially, I need to, I guess, insert a couple of lines of JS into my page to kind of bootstrap the process, and then from that point on, I can instantiate a component, let's say.
Right, pretty much, yeah.
And when you said about that, those potential separate life cycles of development, so my existing app needs those couple of lines of code, and I'm kind of done. And then when I iterate on those components, that would live in a separate repository and would be hosted by, I assume, Myop engine or something like that. Am I following?
So we're supporting several ways of how you actually hosting the components. Some of them we host on our servers, and some of them can be hosted by the user itself, and Myop will just reference to those assets. Yeah. But generally speaking, you're totally right. You're inserting the Myop host SDK inside your application. We're supporting, of course, like a CJS version or a bundle option. So it's either an import or either a script tag. Then you just
Mhm.
call the host SDK load component function, which is one of the main functions of our SDK, getting a config that we will talk in a moment where and from where you can get this config, and a DOM element. And Myop will take it from there. We got a config in end, we got a DOM element you want to start, and from this subtree of your application downstairs, Myop will take care of the rendering and lifecycle.
Clear, clear. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that.
So if we already touch it, I think it's interesting to talk about those configs that are, I said it like it's obvious, but it's not that obvious, right? In most frameworks, in order to render something into some DOM element, you need to have the code of this something, of this component. So in Myop, we take a little bit of different approach. We are treating a component as a config, right? A component, as we already said, it's a contract, can be implemented more than once. All right, we call it variants or skins. So you load the component and treat it like the props and the ref, the types of it, the place it's going to be rendered on the screen as a component, is a single instance. But then what really going to be the implementation, the skin, the variant, can vary, right? Based on the user that currently visiting the site, based on experiment that we're doing, based on, I don't know, just versions that's rolling out. So you need to pass this load component API a component config. Component config can be consumed in two main ways. They're a little bit more complex than that, but two main ways. Locally, so we just can take a component config from our system. We will talk in a moment about the dashboard and everything, and host it yourself. If you do that, you're totally detached from the Myop cloud and SaaS solution. You just take a config. This config is a JSON file. You just host it wherever you want. Can be inside your project, can be on external CDN or server that you are managing. And every time that this config gonna change, your component in production gonna change, right? But you are not connected to us at all. We are just the one that build for you this config. Although it's possible, it's not the recommended way because you then need to go to the dashboard every time, download the config, or do some manual work. The way we are actually recommend to use our system is to go to the Myop dashboard, register there, create the component there. It's a really intuitive yet massive interface to managing components. We allow component visualization there, version history there, multiple skin implementation, the exploration of refs and props. So you kind of get like component, I would say like album of your components there with the visualization possibility. And you can just load more and more implementation to the same component. Once you created it, you can save this component or even use what we are going to launch really soon, the save and ship option. Just one click, you got a code snippet. You are telling us, all right, I want to use this code snippet in React, Vue, Angular, or native. These are the few lines of code that we just talked about. You paste it inside your project and you're done. These lines of code already contains the component ID, the import or the CJS script to load the Myop SDK. And from that on, you can just see the component in your production application.
Clear.
So these are like the three main, or we talked about two, but the two big stones, like the SDK, the dashboard, and of course the third one is our cloud solution, which is set of servers and databases sitting at the cloud. So these are the main the main three pillars.
Clear, clear. And I also think that it's very clear to the audience also. Uh, and if you take like one like very practical scenario where you have uh, let's call it version 14 of some component running, and then you iterate and you create like a new version. So essentially, the deployment process would be done from the Myop dashboard, where I would somehow promote like the newer version of component, and then from that point on, users loading the page would actually start consuming the newer version of the component. And can you also from there see if there are some issues that people might be having, some errors, exceptions, and then I assume there is ability to roll back. But just wondering, because this metrics and observability component seems to be quite important, because it's yeah, you're changing it in deployment process. It just ends up being a little bit different than deploying your main app.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We actually see this change is something that help you managing your production application much more safely and easily. Because you're totally correct that currently, yeah, you are publishing changes to production differently. But this differently is actually in smaller pieces, which we believe should be safer and easier to test, easier to roll back if needed. And by the way, when you implemented this kind of architecture in your production, you can even do what we call deploy preview testing. So test one part of your application in production without affecting users at all. Think about that you took one path of your application or one screen of your application and turn it into Myo, and then you want to release a new version, and you are hesitate if this version has bugs, it looks okay, it performs well. What you can do with Myop is upload these new assets and expose it not to the entire user base, but just for your QA environment, or just for new users, or just for your company employees. And it's totally different than having another environment of testing, right? Because it's sitting inside production. All the rest of the application, the servers, or any other screen that you didn't touch in this test is not affected. It's real production. The same URL of production, the same servers, everything is the same. You just replace specific component or specific screen for specific users. Then, if everything went smoothly and worked properly, you can really easily click a button and publish it to more users up to 100%.
Clear, clear. And this pattern of building apps, because it is really like I mean, you could say yeah, a pattern or practice of composing the app out of different components that are shipped independently and so on. um, do you guys maybe have a name for this pattern, or is it like following some of the existing? I remember, like, the micro frontends era from a couple of years ago. There was a point in time when I ended up hearing about it a lot, and then I stopped hearing about it. Maybe it's about me, maybe it's not. So yeah, if you guys can maybe contrast what you are building with, the industry vibe and state.
Mhm. I can say from my angle, I think it's we can treat it as a micro front-end architecture, but I think it's even a bit bigger, because
Hmm.
in the micro front-end architecture, you know exactly what you're splitting, and yeah, you can deploy separately, but you're not dealing with components that's changing later on, and maybe switch technology, and maybe like one user get this bundle and other getting this bundle. Um, so I don't. I'm not sure that we ever name it properly, but I think it's some kind of. Keren mentioned it sometime in one of the presentation, micro frontend on steroids or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can relate to that.
yeah. It seems that you guys need some new terminology to.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
We need to think about something. I agree with you completely. Um, I mean, on the more tactical level, I think we could address it as a runtime component management, but
Hmm.
obviously there are the elements of the micro deploys and the obviously like UI orchestration layer, which is also something that you don't see today. Like
Yeah.
everything happens today from the code, and we are kind of giving it an external observation, like like a cockpit of a plane, and the plane is your app, and you can now control it remotely, like outside of the code. So definitely it's a new category that we need to kind of work on defining and naming properly.
This point is super important. I think that for the audience that hearing us and had a chance to implement the micro frontend in this way or another, me personally implemented it several times in different companies. For this specific phase of orchestrating your micro frontend solution, I never reached it because it's super expensive already to implement micro frontend, and companies that are doing so, all right, they are finishing, they are reaching the finish line, like exhausted, and then all right, it's already working. Now we have no energy to implement any UI on top of that. Let's just manage it in some JSONs or whatever. And yeah, I'm talking about big companies that I worked with and implemented micro frontend. We ended up like, for the user perspective, it looks great, but for us as a developer, it was like mess of JSONs and configuration, controlling like URLs and versions and things like that. So it's super important point that Keren is raising.
Clear. And you mentioned about something about ability to ship to a segment of users or something like that. One thing that we rely on a lot are feature flags. As we are, shipping things, we are, start shipping something into production very early behind the feature flag, just so the code is there and it's spinning, and maybe it's like a month before anyone outside of our team is going to see that. Do you guys have like built-in primitives for maybe feature flags or something like that, or generally how you are managing, you want to ship a newer version of component only to me, and only if I log in I'm going to be seeing that version, and all the other folks are going to be seeing the previous version?
Yeah, so definitely it's a native part of Myop. When we are started and implemented, like, the ability to load component dynamically, it was obvious for us that, yeah, we have something much more stronger in our hands, and we need to give the ability to, again, involve like A/B testing mechanism or segmentation mechanism or anything like that. And we knew also that existing companies and existing users maybe have already like a decision tree inside or a system that managing it for them. So what we actually did is we took like an interesting approach where in Myop there is a term called segments. And in order to use segments, you go to our dashboard, you define the segment, you give it a name, semantic name. Like, let's say, is first time visitors, or is paying user, or is whatever. Then you're attached to it a function. This function is a function that inside your code, you need to expose to the Myop SDK. Those functions are async Boolean, so you can do whatever you want inside them and then return an answer. Either the segment is yes or no. Then in the Myop dashboard, you create a bunch of segments, order them, right? It's an order based like strategy. And then whenever Myop needs, it runs your functions. So for example, if we took a component and want to expose this to all the users, there is no segment on top of it, right? Everybody is getting the production version. Now we want to segment something. So we created another experiment on top of it and connected to segment. This segment is something that defined inside your code. We are not aware of, the implementation. We shouldn't have any access to it. Once this component gonna be asked to be rendered, we will execute this function, right? And we got the answer. Either it's yes, either it's no. If it's a yes, we're taking the right variant or right skin that you choose in the Myop dashboard. If it's a no, we are continuing to the next segment. If all the segments are no, so we're falling back to the default.
Clear. Yeah, that seems like a great thing, because it lowers the pressure on rolling out new version, which is very important.
Yeah, the different here, by the way, is that in traditional A/B testing or feature flagging, if you are trying to test two versions or three versions, all of them are sitting inside your code, right?
Yeah.
And there can be a step on each other toes or things like that. With Myop, you're actually loading only the right one, so you can, we believe, experiment much more.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Seems like a much better pattern. Yeah, I wanted to ask in terms of like 2025 and the state of MyOp and what's coming next. So if you can briefly speak to us about that.
Yeah. So that's a great question. First of all, we're already in the middle of 2025, right?
Yes.
Time goes fast, especially when you build a startup, I have to say. Yeah, so we exist a little bit more than a year. We've already kind of secured the pre-seed funding a year ago, and kind of and completed the phase of building the first version of our product and releasing it with a couple of customers. And the next phase for us will be, it's already there, but we are actually now starting to roll it openly, widely to any kind of front end developer that would want to explore the technology. Like we understand that we are introducing something that is new. We believe it's much better, but in the dev world, uh, people has to see it to believe it. So
Yes.
Myop is completely open and free to use. Our library is open source, and our platform has a freemium layer. So that's currently the status that we are at. Um, as for the rest of 2025, I think like anyone on this earth, we are putting a lot of focus on seeing how we um, kind of correlate with everything that happens with AI. We have a couple of
Mhm.
customers that already wanted to connect AI output in different ways. Sometimes it was just a simple code that was generated from AI. Sometimes it's a complete component that was generated but also hosted by an AI tool. And I think that one of the things that we are experimenting with now is to make sure that we, as something that is aiming to be as robust and as flexible as possible, are capable of supporting whatever our customers or users want to plug in. So I can go tomorrow and build my own lovable app and then try to connect it to something else I already have up and running, or vice versa. I want to take something that I have up and running, but for 10% of my users to try to kind of try something that I've created with an external tool. We haven't talked about it, by the way. It doesn't have to be AI. We also support any kind of low code tool builder that there is out there. Like we believe there is a room to leverage the major progress that was already made in creating UI, mostly like the interfaces part, less the complex logic. Um, and yeah, and we see that our goal as being this multi-connector adapter, like between your existing tech and new stuff. So this is mostly our focus. But yeah, but we are already kind of open, live, eager for feedback, and yeah.
Great, great. For people that want to experiment and learn more, I guess that the best resource is myop.dev.
Sure.
From there, I guess getting started guide, or there are some potentially videos somewhere on YouTube, or what's the best way to get going?
Yeah, so there is a few like tutorials there. We're working still on the videos because our system is so evolving.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, we find it time consuming, but we will get there. We will get there definitely. It's super important.
yeah.
Yeah, but from the myop.dev, you can see our documentation site with code examples, with the link to the library, which, as we said, openly via npm, you can just install it. Yeah, and also link to our dashboard. Yeah,
Okay, great. Super exciting tech that you guys are building, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.